Good afternoon, fellow active imagination travelers. I'd like to welcome you back to another discussion on active imagination. This time, we thought we'd take a little different approach and direction and talk about how we all, the three of us, became or got to know each other, became affiliated or associated with each other.
Right.
And so I'm Dr. Rodney Penniman, joined by Dr. David Sarnoff and Dr. Steinberg Henry. So I've had the pleasure of working with both of these gentlemen, and I guess you could say I'm the connection between both of them, having worked at different institutions with both of them. So I'll start with Dr. Henry, who we affectionately call Stein. And so Stein was a intern at Georgia State University, where he was working in our accommodations office, and I had the opportunity to work closely with him around several different projects, and it that was back in like 2006, 2007.
Yes,
So
that time.
so the memory has faded a little bit in terms of some of the
Yeah.
work that we did, but Stein was a definite influence and presence around the office. We looked forward to his contributions and working with our staff and with other students. And Stein, you might remember or recall more closely than myself some of the work that you did and the contribution. So if you want to share a little bit about that, the floor is yours.
Yeah, at the time we were pulling together a sort of newsletter, um, something on disability and disability services and students. We were providing the accommodation, yes. We were having meetings with students who wanted to speak about, they wanted to air their concerns about disability issues that were affecting them within the university. I remember at that time, there was one professor who didn't particularly like a student with a disability, and that created quite a furor. And he asked the student, if you have a dis told the student, if you have a disability, why don't you stay at your home? Those sorts of things. Um, but it was a very wonderful space. Students were continually coming in, David seeking accommodation. There was one student who didn't like to do her exams around a lot of people, so we had to find a particular room for her, those sorts of things. But it was good camaraderie, and whenever I found the time, I would slip into Rodney's office, or Rodney would come over by where I was seated, and we'd talk. And I remember he referred to me fondly as the scholar in residence. So I was quite pleased with that particular accolade, but certainly a very important space. That was where I first met Rodney Penniman. And of course, fast forward, you're talking about seven, and then again in 21, 22, 14 to 15 years later, I was looking for a I was looking for an external reader for my dissertation, and I remembered him, but I wasn't quite sure where he was, so I sought him out. I said, "Where is this gentleman?" And found him. I don't remember clearly how I found him, but I found him. And immediately he said, "Of course, I'd be delighted to work on your dissertation committee." And he was the one who would have brought to my attention the whole idea of, interpretive phenomenological analysis as methodology. Very important work. And, David, we have 5 chapters in our dissertation, at least in our school and in North America. And Rodney, I remembered, was responsible for asking me questions on chapter 3 and chapter 5. So it was quite an interesting exchange, and I'm well pleased. I've really appreciated his candor, his openness, and his ability to draw um, a number of important things to my own thinking, reading through my work, telling me what he thought. I remember once I was finished with chapter 3, and I was still writing another 7 pages, and I told me, Stein, please send it to me. I sent it to him. He said, but Stein, you're through with the chapter long ago. Why don't we move ahead to a next thing? So he was that precise. And his final words to me were, the only good dissertation is a done dissertation. So I began to think in those terms. As for David, I met David when we came on this set. And David and I have continued to have phone calls. And when David goes to walk, he would call me, Stein, I'm taking a walk. And we would talk for about 20 minutes to half an hour, just talk about everything we can think of. We're just talking while David is walking and I'm here. Sometimes we talk about what we're doing now, what we're planning to do, some of the technology we need. Other times we talk about ideas, about active imagination, fantasy, the psyche, learning, human development, David's own work, in Jungian analysis, and and of course his flute work, which is exceptionally brilliant, and it really adds a great sense of being to our discourse and discussions here. So I am beginning to get to know David more and more as he holds very vital conversations. He actually sent me a document to read and to give him my impressions. I must confess that I haven't done that as yet, but I surely hope to do it. It's a very important document that captures his journey through the Holy Land. And having mentioned the Holy Land, David, I remembered you told me, Stein, we need to have a name for the program. Why don't we call it Two Blacks and a Jew? But that I remember that said. But it's a pleasure meeting you, David, and it's a pleasure having met Rodney and Rodney's insistence. Stein, your dissertation is not something we're going to leave on the shelf. We have to do something with it. And so I immediately give myself some energy and say, come on, let's go with this. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Stein, and also thank you for reminding me that I had called you a scholar in residence because just from our conversations with you, I
Yes.
learned the depth of your experience, the rich depth of your experience and knowledge and experiences that you had in your home country of Dominica, uh,
Dominica, yes.
along with your teaching in various universities in
Yes.
Canada,
Yeah.
in Canada, and your experience in the radio and
Yes.
music. You've written several publications on
Calypso.
Calypso, and so yeah, such a depth of just experience and knowledge. And like I say, I think this whole work around active imagination is a crowning achievement and jewel uh, of your life's work. So now, Dr. David Cernoff, and
Let's
we
get to the real flutist, the real
I was,
man.
yes, I was going to comment on some of the things that Stein said. That when I met him and through these meetings, I started really appreciating all the knowledge you had, all the book learning, all these different things you read, and your
What do you mean by book learning? Now let me hold you up here.
well, I mean, your academic discipline, or the fact you were widely read in many different, philosophy and psychology and many different areas. And I admired. My father was a professor, and he and my mother wrote several books. I mean, so I was kind of raised to really admire that. And of course, it's part of the Jewish culture to
Mhm,
the
mhm.
old Jewish scribes would write down the Bible by hand, letter for letter, perfectly.
Mm.
So so I really appreciated that, but also beyond that kind of learning, you also had a lot of experiential learning through meditation. And so, excuse me a second, let me have some water. I don't know what happened to me, but maybe the state of the world is making me sick today, a little bit sick.
A lot going on for sure. A lot going on.
Your experience in meditation, experiential, I mean, you've learned, not only all, study of all different kinds of meditation and spiritual practices, but also the active imagination, things you've done within your own imagination, your own consciousness. So you have, unlike a lot of intellectuals, you also have a deep experiential knowledge from looking within. So that's there's other traditions. I mean, some of those ancient traditions from India and Asia and places where people meditate and learn from looking within their own mind. So I think you've got a nice combination of both of those. And of course, your interest in music, of course, interested me as well.
Mhm.
So, but I guess I could back up because before I met you, I met Rodney, and
Mhm.
the reason I met Rodney is we were working together at Webster University, and I could take this story back just a little bit into how I got to Webster University. I'd come to Charleston, South Carolina uh, to work as a psychologist after I got my PhD in 1982, and then of course making a small salary my initial job, and I was married and trying to make a living, and I was looking for a little side work, and another psychologist told me, well, go to Webster University. They're always looking for professors. And back then, the department they had that I was qualified teaching was human resources development. And so, so it was kind of like maybe psychology for managers in a sense. And I was teaching some of those courses. But then as the years went by, I got more and more involved in teaching. I became an academic advisor, and I was teaching courses every weekend. And then we had a licensing law in South Carolina because there was such a need for therapists, and the psychologists, the PhD level psychologists, weren't really enough to take care of all the people who had mental health needs. So there was a big movement to have master's level counselors throughout the country. And in 1987, they had a licensing law in South Carolina to license professional counselors with a master's degree. So then I talked to the director of our program there, David Dunlap. I said, we really need to have a counseling program here. So he let me start the counseling program in 1988, and I was the first faculty member. I remember I had a class. They said we had to have 5 students to start, so we got just 5 students. And then one of them dropped out before on the first day or something. But I continued class with 4, but then the rest was history. We had many classes and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people went through that program, and I really enjoyed building the program and helping with the curriculum and hiring the initial faculty and things like that. But after a few years, I was busy with my practice, and I kind of backed off from that. One of the guys I hired
Mhm.
became the director of the program, and then after many years later, when he moved away to Myrtle Beach, then we needed a new director for the program, and so there was a search, and that's where Rodney got the job, and I met him because he all of a sudden became my boss, and that was kind of nice that he and I were there in the same department. So maybe you could take the story from there.
Well, yeah, certainly. As you indicated, David, yeah, you were one of the original founders of the of the clinical mental health counseling program there, and you brought in several faculty members. So I think we had a good group, as well as a good group of students that, as you said, that we educated, and that are now practicing clinicians. I was pleased a couple years ago. I think it was 20 right after I think the pandemic. We got a chance to get together with some of those students
Hey, I remember we had
there.
lunch together though.
Yeah, I had lunch with them there in uh, Charleston, and it was pleased, to see them out in the field, and they had their own practices, and so those are the types of accomplishments when you can see the results of your work, come back, and so that once again was something that was a highlight. But yeah, David, I mean, when you think about the work that you've done there in that community with your practice as a, practicing psychologist, when you think of, some of the work that you've done with your organization that you've put together, and we've talked about that before. What I'm sorry, help me remember the title.
What we agree on.
What we agree on, yes. And so at some point, I think we need to reinvigorate that and see, because there's definitely a need to bring together individuals. My dissertation work centered around intergroup dialogue, and so looking at the work of facilitators who bring together individuals from differing backgrounds to talk about and reach some kind of common ground or discussion. It could be, you know, issues around feminism or gender or race or what have you. But your organization, definitely uh, focused on some of that work. And I believe after your journey coming back from Israel, where you went to the wall, the Wailing Wall, you talked about the stone, your experience, with the stone, the heart in the stone. I think you've written a song about that, if I remember correctly. I think you were writing a book or something along those lines, or a paper or something along that. But I say that to say that both of you all have a breadth of work and knowledge that you've been a part of, that you've done. Your work with the Jungian Society, David. There, I'm a Jungian at heart. I kind of fell in love with the work of Carl Jung. I'm also a bit of a psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, but in this managed care environment, there's that form of practice is I wouldn't say frowned upon, but it's not as doesn't fit with today's health, mental health environment, so to speak. And so the more of the brief therapy type of model, the solution focused, get people in and out. Used to be, you've got, with a psychoanalyst, you could lay on the couch for years. Now you might have 10 sessions to solve that problem. But I kind of drifted off a little bit. But anyway, so again, I appreciate the work of Carl Jung, your involvement with the Jungian Society, and again, I think my connection with all of you all has really been, predicated around the work in higher education, and with serving students and what have you. So.
Yeah, it's nice that we've kept up with each other over the years. You went when you moved away from Charleston to Atlanta. That was many years. What year was that? That was several years ago now, right?
2017. Yeah, that was 20.
That's like 8 years ago. So, but for the last 8 years, I've been lucky enough to get to teach a few residencies over in Atlanta. So I got to come and see you a few times, and we'd have dinner
Sure.
there. And then you came to visit me in Charleston once or twice. So it's nice that we've been able to keep up with each other over that 8 years, and we worked on a writing project together and things like that. So it's
Sure.
fun to maintain that collegiality, even though we weren't still working at the same job. And so it's
Sure.
nice
Sure.
for people to.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that particular the Webster is still around, but that particular campus in Charleston was unfortunately closed, and so that kind of has left a bit of a void. Although there are other institutions there, but that did kind of leave a little bit of a void of all those individuals and students that we'd come to know there. So.
Of course, a lot of the classes are online now. So
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, a lot of the classes are online, have moved online, and Columbia has been the central focus for Webster, at least in this particular area of the country. So,
That's
well,
excellent stuff. Yeah, that's excellent. I'm thinking, David, I want to thank you for jumping in on this discussion, because Rodney was the one who cited what I had done and thought it was over beyond just the normal place it on a shelf kind of thing. Let us look into it And also, I appreciate the fact that you all, should I say, quote, quote, accommodate or just allow me to be with you, even though I am visual impaired and blind. And I think those listening to us or watching us probably would not have thought of this. But these two gentlemen simply accommodated me and said, come on, let's go, let's do the work. And so there's a lot to be said regarding Carl Gustav Jung, the unconscious fantasy, the psyche, and just digging into the human resource with particular reference to blind people who are said to have a low sense of self-esteem. They've lost confidence in themselves. They no longer think they matter because they can't see the world. And I came along saying, hey guys, there's a tremendous resource in you. You have a psychology, you have a psyche, you can dream, you can imagine, you can tap into the biology of your being, which is so linked to Jung's long journey from the unconscious way to the biology. And you two just took it up and you said, come on, we can, and you two could speak about it. So it brought me to a place where I began to feel, you know what, let's just get this running. Let us begin to talk about active imagination, not only for those who are blind, but also for even as for the visual. The visual need to hear this conversation more. You who can see need to hear more from us about your own potential, your ability beyond your own senses. See the capacity within you for transcendent, for digging into your wisdom body, for all these things that have been so quote cultivated by a particular culture that wants you to be probably superficial or just look on the outside. Whilst within you, Carl Gustav Jung was saying, why don't you go into yourself? And I think this is what is most beautiful about this work. And this is what we are trying to draw to the attention of you who have taken the time to listen to us and to watch us. We're talking about a resource that is within. We're talking about a tremendous capacity. We're talking about unfolding of wisdom through the ages. And that's what we're talking about. And for the persons who are blind, it means, come on, let's begin to live again. Because if you can't see outside, you have to be able to see inside.
Mm,
You
mm.
know, I've been thinking about you for a long time that the word see lots of times has two meanings. Like one is seeing with your eyes, but there's another see, like you say, oh, I see, meaning I understand. And so, in the terms of understanding, seeing to understand, because seeing is a perception, we're trying to understand reality, and sometimes we think we can understand something because we see something. But really seeing and really understanding is much more complex than just looking with your eyes. So, even though you're blind, you see things much more clearly than a lot of sighted people I know. So, I mean, so you can see better, maybe even though you're blind, than some sighted people, even though they can see,
Mhm.
they can't
I
see.
think it's important to hear you say that. I think that was the message we had at accommodations at Georgia State Department of Disability Services. It was drawing to people in the capacity, their full potential, which somehow gives us an insight into our next topic for discussion, which is well-being and active imagination. David, I think you'd have to say a lot about this. Rodney, being a clinician, would have quite a bit to say about well-being and active imagination.
Yes, I've experienced it.
One of the things that, as you were talking, Stein, that came to mind too was the this whole ideal behind synchronicity, and how us coming together was a series of just synchronous, events that I don't know that we would have been able to predict or foresee, but I think how this whole thing, with your dissertation, has evolved, to to bring out a particular topic that I found very interesting. Well researched, and just going back to your dissertation, probably perhaps one of the best dissertations I've had the pleasure of reading. And over the course, all of us, as we know, when you're working on your dissertation, read other dissertations. And so I say that to say that I've read numerous dissertations, and yours by far was superior and excellent. But this whole notion around active imagination and just the synchronicity of events and the trail that has connected us all together. I enjoy connecting individuals together. And so if I can be the glue, so to speak, or the point of contact, that invisible string or what have you to bring people together, I enjoy doing that. So I think what we're seeing now is a result of that synchronistic event of just being able to come together and join on a topic that David, being part of the Jungian Society, and you actually writing, on his work. I mean, you talk about a
Yeah, that was
synchronicity.
like a synchronous moment. Like I was getting
A
ready
synchronous moment.
I was getting ready to present this thing, and then you introduced me to Stein right after that, and so it
Yes,
came
yes.
together. Then the other thing was I'm a nature lover, and I like to look for signs in nature. And when we first started doing these video calls, I was walking around my neighborhood, and I saw three black crows landing on the street next to me.
Ah,
And so, like lots of times in the symbolism, like in the Native American symbolism, the crows are a symbol of like death and rebirth. So it's like and it was kind of like
Yes.
the three crows. So what it meant to me is, maybe instead of trying to do something alone, I would do something with three people. There are three crows and three of us. I think the combination of collaborating and working together is so much more powerful. You see so many individuals trying to act smart and being out by themselves and saying they're the big teacher up there and everybody's listening to them. It's like they know better and people are looking up to them. But this is
Yeah.
different. It's the three of us trying to get ideas from each other and bounce off each other and create something as a group. And I think that's what the world needs now. Like you were saying earlier, bringing people together. That we really need to start working together because that's where the real magic happens when we do things together.
so maybe we should call ourselves the Crow Brothers. We'll get some T-shirts
We
made
can
up.
outrun death if we're fast enough.
I'm sorry.
We can outrun death if we're fast enough.
Well, yeah, Edgar Allan Poe's poem about the raven. Of course, he was the raven, but I'm sure the
Yeah.
raven and the crow were some kind of
Symbolic birds. Yeah.
yeah, somehow related. But anyway,
Yeah.
well, listen,
And
go ahead.
yeah, David, I think we're almost getting to the point where you have to give us a flute outro.
Okay.
You have to take us out of this brilliant discussion, this lovely exchange, getting to know each other or telling the viewers, listeners how we met each other. I think this is wonderful. So and hopefully, as was indicated, usually our discussions produce the next matter. We seem to flow naturally into where next we're going. And the next matter we had listed was well-being and active imagination. So hopefully we can come to that next week, Friday, at about the same time. Certainly a pleasure.
Until next time, wishing you all a active imagination.